Asar Nisim Nasu Laviseinu b'Mitzrayim. 10 miracles were done or performed for our forefathers in Egypt. V'asara alayam, and 10 miracles were performed on the ocean, on the sea. And we see these were miracles that took place in terms of looking after the Jewish people, that there was a miraculous involvement from Hashem. Eser makos hevia Kadosh Baruch Hu ala Mitzrayim, b'Mitzrayim, ve'eser alayam. And then the Mishnah continues to tell us that there were 10 afflictions or plagues that befell the Egyptians in Egypt, which were performed by Kadosh Baruch Hu, and also 10 plagues that took place al hayam, which means at the sea. 10 plagues befell the Egyptians at the sea. And, just to give us a little bit of background here, we're all familiar with the 10 plagues that happened in Egypt, but we're not as familiar with the 10 plagues that befell the Egyptians at the sea. So we know there were 10 miracles that happened for the Israelites in the ocean. It says the sea split. It took the shape of a tent. It's not that it actually split open in the middle, but it actually retained some tunnel-like channel shape. It says that the bottom of the sea became dry, that it was easy for the Israelites to walk through without getting their shoes dirty and stuck to the floor. And it says that when the Egyptians came in, the seabed turned back into clay and mud. And it says that not only did the sea divide into one channel, but it split off into 12 channels, etc., etc. Yeah, lots of different things took place. Sweet water flowed from the water there that you could drink it, etc., etc. Many, many different unique miracles took place within the crossing of the ocean, within the splitting of the sea. And we know that 10 different afflictions also befell the Egyptians during that period of time. And we're not going to go specifically into those at the moment. So at the moment in our learning here or evaluation of the Mishnah, what is this teaching us? What is this teaching us? That there were 10 miracles that befell our forefathers in Egypt and 10 that took place in the ocean. And then it says that there were 10 afflictions that befell the Egyptians and 10 at the ocean. What is that meant to teach us? Bit of an interesting juxtaposition here. And then the Mishnah concludes and says, Asar nisyonos nisu aviseinu es hamokim. 10 tests transpired that the Jewish people sent or tested HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the desert. As it says, as it says that the Jewish people tested God 10 times and they didn't listen to his voice. And an example or a few examples of these tests were the complaints that the Jewish people had. The first complaint was, is there a shortage of graves that you have to take us out into the desert to die here? Couldn't we just die in Egypt? They complained about water. They complained about food. They complained about the manna, that they didn't listen to Moses in terms of taking the right amount every day, and they had to take extra, where God said, you're not allowed to take extra, you have to take the portion for each day. And they complained that they were sick of the manna, that they wanted to have meat. All of these different complaints, not having water flowing as it was originally, all of these complaints against Hashem. So these were the tests, so to speak, that they catalyzed or caused before God, what it means you could test God. Okay? So now what is this Mishnah teaching us? And to be honest with you, I struggled for a while to try and understand the message of this Mishnah, to try and understand what the teaching or juxtaposition at the beginning, how it correlates to the end. And I think, the crystallization of this teaching is very, very relevant. And I came to realize how important this Mishnah is, especially in the context of our current circumstances, but I think in the circumstances of life in general. So let's have a look. What is the initial juxtaposition here in the Mishnah? What does it mean that Hashem performed 10 miracles for our forefathers in Egypt and 10 at the ocean, and then we immediately juxtapose it with the 10 afflictions that befell the Egyptians in Egypt and the 10 ones that afflicted the Egyptians at the ocean? What is that juxtaposition? So if you think about it, okay, if you think about it, the most detailed and intimate and infused activity are the activities that have a push-pull element within them, okay? I'll give you an example of this push-pull element. One of the things in yoga practice, I don't know if anyone does yoga here, but one of the things in yoga practice is that the way you hold your body to a certain extent in certain poses, and the way you're meant to teach your mind, is that there's a form of relaxation within the body, but it's also structured. Okay, so there's a combination of two opposites, that the body is somewhat pulling and relaxing at the same time, that there's like a combination, a yin and yang within the experience of what you're doing in the movement. Okay, and there's something very spiritual about that type of activity. Same too, when we see this engagement with the world from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that the Mefarshim explain here, what does it mean that there were 10 miracles that happened for our forefathers and 10 afflictions for the Egyptians? What they reveal to us is, in fact, the 10 afflictions that befell the Egyptians were part and parcel of the miracles that happened for the Jewish people. For example, when the Egyptians were struck with darkness, the Jewish people had light. When the Egyptians were struck with blood, or the water turning into blood, the water turned into water, or blood turned into water for the Jewish people. Okay? So the exact actions that befell, or the afflictions that befell the Egyptians, were actually miracles and forms of blessing for the Jewish people. Now that's quite a fascinating reality. I mean, can you imagine that? There's nothing more intricate and detailed and perfect about an action that is not only, you can easily destroy something. You can easily, diminish something. That's something that everyone can do. It's easy to just pour wrath upon humanity. But within the same wrath, within the same activity of destruction, to bring blessing through that, I mean, that is mind-blowing. That is spellbinding. That's beyond recognition. That's something godly. That's showing that Hashem is not just haphazardly engaging with this form of activity, but within the actual makkos, within the actual afflictions, blessings come out from them for those that are worthy. Okay? So that is something that is beyond. And what it shows us is the intricate involvement of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in our lives, that everything is detailed, everything is thought about, everything is perfect. Now, how this correlates to the end of the Mishnah is very powerful, in which we see the end of the Mishnah is about the Jewish people complaining, about the Jewish people saying, Hashem, I mean, what is going on here? You've just really dropped us. You're not interested in us. You're not being intricately involved with us. You're not giving us the right food. You want us to die in the desert. And essentially, if you were to sum up all of the complaints that took place with the Jewish people in the desert, it was all about complaining about the future. Saying, Hashem, you've just dropped us. You don't care about us. You don't worry about us. You don't have a concern about our best interests in the future. And again, I'll give you one example just to highlight this, okay? And this is a very important example, which we're going to learn a very fundamental principle for life. One of the complaints was about the quail, or one of the complaints was brought by a group of people called the Asafsaf, okay? And the Asafsaf complained that they were sick of eating the manna, that they wanted meat, okay? And they said, enough of this manna, we're sick of it, we want some meat. And it says that Hashem brought this huge amount of quail that just flew in. And the Jewish people stuffed themselves with meat. And it said a big plague pursued them after that experience, after that consumption, after that lust for food. So now, the Zohar and the Shem Shmuel, the Sogachava Rebbe, bring something very, very, very important here. And that is that the complaint of the Jewish people about meat or not having meat wasn't a lustful complaint. In fact, what the Jewish people, if you realize, they were subject to the biggest miracles. They were in the desert. They were totally one with Hashem. What were they actually complaining about? You know what they were complaining about? They were complaining that they were worried about the future. What were they worried about? Well, they were saying to Hashem, listen, Hashem, we know that we're about to step foot in Israel. And to be in Israel, we need to acclimatize ourselves to the type of food that's eaten in Israel. At the moment, we're eating manna. At the moment, we are very, very, spiritual entities. I mean, they didn't even go to the toilet, mind you, because they were so spiritual. There was nothing to excrete through their consumption of food. So now they're entering into Israel, started creating some fear and anxiety. Hashem, listen, we need to eat meat now. We need to get used to the diet, so it just doesn't hit us immediately. We need to start getting used to physicality. Otherwise, how do you expect us to survive in Israel? And the Shem Shmuel explains that the actual word, asafsaf, comes from the word, what do you think there, Terry? Gathering. Yeah, there's another word there. Sof. What sof mean?
End.
The end. Okay? Worrying about the end. What is going to be. Okay? Hashem, listen, you don't have a plan right for me. I'm worried about the future. I'm worried about what's going to be. I'm worried about, being ready. Okay? And they were worrying spiritually. And we often worry to ourselves if we don't have enough money, if we don't have the right circumstances, if we don't have the right experience, what's going to be? What's going to be? What's going to be? Always what's going to be. And the antidote to that worrying was Aaron. It says that Aaron came out with the antidote. And what Aaron represented, according to the Kabbalist, if you take his letters of his word, of his name, Aleph is 1, Hey is 5, Resh is 200, and Nun is 50. So all the letters of Aaron, apart from 1, which 1 represents the essence, the oneness, the presence, the totality. All of the other letters are middle letters. So Hey is the middle letter of the tens. Resh is the middle letter of the hundreds. And Nun, 50, is the middle letter of the tens. Yeah, all within the tens. Up to 100, 50 is the middle. So Aaron was teaching us something very important. What takes us out of our experience of life is a form of complaint that life doesn't have our back, that we really, really need to somewhat second guess ourselves constantly, second guess God constantly, and be in a state of flurry, of anxiety, of insecurity in order to manufacture or create security. And what we're learning here within this teaching is understand that Hashem gives us everything that we need in its right time. Yes, there are difficult circumstances. Yes, there are circumstances which we say to ourselves, you know what, I don't like this. But Hashem gives us opportunities constantly to either, number one, preempt situations in life that may take place in the future, to learn from things in life that may take place in the future. And opportunities are constantly arising in terms of what we need to galvanize to engage with the future. So what they didn't realize is Hashem was going to give them a circumstance that would allow them to enter into a more seamless transition into Israel. You know, they were looking at the way that they seamlessly integrated into the desert. So the Shem MaShmuel says, well, didn't they look and possibly consider how Hashem allowed them to enter into the immediate consumption of manna? I mean, how do you go from eating meat to eating manna? So he explains, you know what happened? Before they were actually redeemed, it says that manna rained down into the desert. It then turned into water. The water was eaten by the animals. And then when the Jewish people consumed those animals, they already were somewhat acclimatized to the flavor of the manna, the spiritual essence of the manna. So that slowly, when they came into the desert, they were now ready to eat the manna. Hashem prepared them. Hashem readied them. And what we're learning here is this juxtaposition. The initial part of the mission is saying Hashem is intricately involved in our lives. There's a push-pull reality here that Hashem is so constantly present that yes, it sometimes seems that something is strict or something is bereft of Hashem or something seems distant. But Hashem also is intimately involved. It seems Hashem gives us circumstances where we need to learn and we need to grow and we need to develop. It's almost that Hashem is cuddling us and looking after us perfectly. But on the other hand, we get into this mentality of complaining, of saying, Hashem, you're not with us. We don't have the right parnasa. We don't have the right circumstances. We don't have the right situations. We're worried about the future. What are we going to do? So this is the juxtaposition here. It's saying they listen to Hashem's voice. Yeah, if you look at the end of the Mishnah, it says, they tested me 10 times and didn't listen to my voice. Hashem is speaking to us every day of our lives. If I was to look at my life, and I want everyone to consider your own lives, what the initial part of the Mishnah is saying, look back. Yes, there have been trials and tribulations, but if we look closely, we see that Hashem has prepared us every step of the way to be where we need to be in circumstances that we need to be in. I mean, if I even shared with you how I ended up being in Cape Town, doing the work that I'm doing, I mean, you wouldn't even imagine what took place, I was a teacher in Sydney, Australia. We came here on holiday to Joburg and I had to give a small talk in Glen Hazel in the afternoon on Shabbos. I gave a small talk and one thing led to another, And I can tell you 2 weeks or 3 weeks before that, I was worrying about, what type of work do I need to be doing? I want to, evolve out of the type of things that I was doing in Australia. And I was worrying, what should I do? And boom, what happens? Hashem creates a direction for you. And what we learn is not to force things. Yeah. Yes, we have to be proactive. Yes, we have to do our ishtadlus, which means you have to be thinking, you have to be considering, you have to be taking the opportunities that life presents you. And sometimes, yes, you need to create opportunities. But never does it have to be with a sense of angst, with a sense of anxiety, with a sense of worrying, with a sense of complaint. That's not conducive to anything. And in fact, it undermines the reality of what is. So what we're learning from the Mishnah is almost the push-pull experience of life. Relax yourself. Allow yourself to be totally present in your experience of life. Allow yourself to be totally immersed. I'll give you just another example and then we'll open it up to everyone here. We've been going for these amazing walks, in the morning because of lockdown. Life's not such a rush. So we're with the family. I'm walking with my kids hand in hand in the morning, with the dog on the beach. When do I get to do that as a rabbi? When? I get to be with my family during the day. The nighttime I read to my kids and be with them, and it's just much more relaxed, And so I'm thinking to myself, especially while teaching this Mishnah, I'm thinking to myself, you know what? This is amazing. I mean, there's so many amazing aspects here. And a person can develop an anxiety of we're going to go back into lockdown, we're going to go back into normal day life. And then things aren't going to be the same, that we're going to maybe lose the interactions and then sensitivities that we've gained from being in lockdown. And you start to worry, Wouldn't it be nice to retire already? Have enough money to be able to just go for walks with the family on the beach every morning? It'd be great, no? And you can potentially complain. You can complain to Hashem, why don't you do this? Why don't we facilitate that? So, yes, I think there are many lessons to learn from lockdown, many lessons to learn that we've been able to slow down the pace of life. But whatever life is going to present us, its way in the future, I'm open because Hashem is running the show. And Hashem has given us the lessons of lockdown. It's not to create more anxieties. It's to say, here, I've given you a reshift, a rethink. Okay, now opportunities are going to present themselves in the future. Shifts in how you're going to engage decision makings with how you're going to engage with decisions. How you're going to make decisions in the future is going to change. But be open to that. It doesn't mean you have to create an anxiety about the future. Whatever the future is, let's see. Now let's engage. How do I retain that sense of push-pull? Meaning, yes, I have to be proactive in life. Yes, I have to galvanize life. I can't just sit back. But at the same time, create a state of relaxation inside oneself and understand Hashem's with you and Hashem's guiding you and Hashem's giving you the necessary lessons, that you need in order to engage with the future in a more productive way. And that's what it means that you tested God and didn't listen to the voice. Hashem is speaking to us. Hashem is engaging with us. Don't complain about Hashem and don't complain about life. Life is perfect. Exactly what needs to be is exactly what is to be. As the Chofetz Chaim, I told you this quote, asked the man, how are you today? And the man replied, could be better. The Chofetz Chaim said, it's totally wrong. If it could be better, it would be better. It's precisely the way it needs to be. Okay? And what we're understanding is, yes, we have lots of lessons we can learn in life. Don't be anxious about those lessons. Be open now to taking those lessons and the voice of Hashem and integrating that into the future. What new opportunities approach one in their own life? Great, take them, learn from them. Those opportunities could be the smallest things, an opportunity of in the afternoons or in the evenings. Do I go on my phone now and start working, or do I sensitize myself to my family in a more integrated way? Yeah, that's an opportunity, and that's a lesson that we can take with us from lockdown, and that's something we can integrate into our lives in the future. So it's all about restructuring, and not restructuring with anxiety and fear, but restructuring with a presence and with an openness to what life is going to teach us and bring to us in the future. Not focusing on safsuf, constantly worrying about the soif, what's going to be in the future. Yeah. So let's put it over to you guys. Terry, for some reason, I'm thinking about you here, Terry. Can you give us an insight here, a life lesson?
All right. Well,
but let me premise, Terry. I want to premise what you're about to say. For a bit of a background for anyone here that doesn't know Terry. I don't know Terry so well, but Terry. But I do feel like we're mishpacha now, so we do have a closeness here. But Terry is an individual that experienced a lot of tribulation initially in life, and somewhat was blessed with a circumstance of huge blessing, and it'd be interesting to understand your perspective along your journey, how this potentially was experienced in your life. Go for it, Terry, if you don't mind.
Well, you're 100% correct with what you say. As you know, I told you that I wasn't from till about 4 or 5 years ago. But all during my life, I had that feeling that I believed in God, I believed in Hashem, and I had the feeling that He was there. I'm one of the least people that complains, and I used to always get very upset at people that complained about absolutely stupid things. You'd go to a restaurant that was 50, 60% Jewish people, and all you heard was people complaining about everything. And my mind kept saying, well, what are these people complaining about? If we'd have come here 70 years earlier, we'd have been sitting in Auschwitz. And that kind of mentality I had even from my early 20s. Although I never davened every day like I do now and do all the things I do now, I was aware that Hashem was there and guiding me. When this thing hit me a few years ago, funnily enough, people say, what happened? I was on the treadmill at gym one morning, and suddenly I had this, I don't know what the word is, inspiration or revelation. And when I started thinking about it, I looked back at every single Advent in my life and realized Hashem was pushing me in a different direction. And today people ask me, how are you coping with the lockdown? I said, I'm very relaxed because I know that going forward, there's a plan. We just don't understand the plan, and that's always been our problem. Yeah. And I've never understood why our nation, if you look at what we've just learned and read, complains all the time. I think oy vey are the most common words used by Jewish people.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. And, a very interesting example, I think, when I was speaking to my wife about this Mishnah, what her thoughts were about this, I'll give you an example. Yeah, we had an amazing opportunity last year to be flown out to Israel for a celebration, and we were given the most amazing experience to be put up in a hotel and to be given the most beautiful experiences of food, kosher food in Israel, and tiolim and traveling. It was amazing. And, there were maybe one or two circumstances that, no food was provided and you had to go and buy a falafel or whatever it is, which we loved. And my wife said to me, imagine if we came along and we said, I can't believe it. They brought us here and they expect us to buy, some falafel for one or two meals. Imagine we went and complained to the family, like, guys, you need to provide us with food, what's going on? So it was like crazy. Imagine a person thinking like that, We didn't think that, but you can imagine someone doing that, especially a Yid, would come along and say, I can't believe what a chutzpah, they bring me to Israel, put me up in a hotel, they expect me to buy my own food, So to a certain extent, if we think about it in context, what has Hashem done? If we see the miracles, firstly, of life leading up until now, number one, not only in a global way, but in our own personal lives, all of the minutiae and the details and the beautiful miracles that have led us to where we are. And everyone has experienced miracles. The Rabbi Nosson, he says here that, he says something amazing. He says, each day contains many miracles, some large, most small, but they are there. We have to look for them and appreciate them, which means every day has miracles in them, some large, most small. And if we consider, it's as if Hashem has taken us to Israel, on this free flight, put us up in a hotel. All right, you have to buy a falafel here and there, but you're going to complain against God? If you look at it in context, what actually is happening in life, an opportunity of life, what are you complaining about? You sugar, as you put it there, Terry, I mean, we've been liberated to the deepest sense. We can breathe, we can exist. There's so much to be happy about, but yet we complain. So I think that this teaching here about letting go, stop the worry about future. Yes, be productive, be proactive. What needs to happen, but it shouldn't be met with an angst or a desperation or a forcing of a circumstance. It needs to be met with a presence of understanding that Hashem is guiding us. Sometimes we don't know what's in the future. We don't know what's going to happen. I mean, imagine the Jewish people go into Egypt with what? You go into the desert with what? You got nothing. You must sugar. Hashem provides. There was water that was coming by. There was manna that came. Hashem is guiding us every step of the way in terms of our own growth and evolution as people, and we are all going to be okay. You have to understand that, yeah? So that's the teaching here. Anyone else want to share an idea, ask a question about this concept?
My thoughts are, the first part of the Mishnah talks about all the blessings that we receive from Hashem. And the second part, despite all the blessings that we received from Hashem, the Israelites complained. But the last part of the Mishnah is cause for great hope. And that is, despite testing Hashem 10 times, he didn't abandon the Israelites. He still continued to give them blessing.
Yes, I think that's a very, very powerful concept as well, and I think it shows us, and I think that's beautiful there, and I think it very much ties into the beginning part of the Mishnah. It's not only an understanding that there's a juxtaposition here, but look how great Hashem is to us, and we're just so ungrateful. We just complain, and we just just such detached people. It's saying to us, look how much Hashem loves us, that he's number one, so involved with our lives, that number two, even when we complain and even when we say, Hashem, what are you doing? Hashem says still, I love you like a child. I know that you don't understand the bigger picture, but I'm with you. I'm there for you. I'm going to take you through everything you need to go through. And this is for you, for your benefit, for your growth. Yeah. For your blessing. So I think that's a beautiful concept, that even though we tested Hashem so many times, Hashem never let go of us. And Hashem will never let go of us. Yeah. Even though you sometimes are upset and sometimes don't know, Hashem is still with you. Yeah. Within that framework. Yeah. Thank you for that, Alan. Okay. Any final points there? Derek, yes.
I've got a question that always bothered me.
Yeah.
The question I've always, if they had so many cattle and sheep and everything that they had, why were they complaining about meat? Because they could have slaughtered their meat and had it. Or am I missing something?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. I think by that time, it could be that they ran out of cattle, that they didn't have sufficient amounts of cattle, and that's when they started to question Hashem. That would be one answer, but I think, yeah, that's a good question. I know that they did have cattle that they took with them, but I think the answer is that they'd consumed it, so they didn't have a sufficient amount now to sustain.
Oh, they ran out of it. Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, guys. Ken, what do you say there? Kenny?
The inspiration, something I'll think about most of the day, come back to you with a controversial kind of opinion.
I like that. Controversy is much, much more powerful when, many times people just throw out a controversial thing without thinking about what we've learned. But it packs a real punch after you have a guy thinking about it the whole day, So You've got me trembling here, Kenny. We look forward to the question. Yeah, beautiful. Yeah. Jenny, you want to say something? Nadine, Jacques, Andrea, Colin, Gracia, Mark, what do you guys?
Rabbi, there's something that I'd like to say.
Yeah.
You know, when you're in a moment of fear, or when I've been in a moment of fear and anxiety, there's always been this beautiful statement that's just put things into context, and it's that everything works together for the greater of good. Just that alone.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. I think, you know, again, the main thing that we all contend with is, to a certain extent, is, and if we be frank with ourselves, essentially what we all want is tranquility. Essentially what we all want is to be present with Hashem, to connect to Hashem. What that means is to be present in life, to be able to walk on the promenade or wherever we're walking with our kids' hands and not worry, you know, and just be present. That's what we want in life. And if we don't have kids, whatever the experience of life is, to be present, to feel connected, to feel the warmth of life. That's what we want. And our biggest concerns is financial, is health, is people and relationships and all of these things. And we think to ourselves, Hashem, you know, don't create a circumstance where we're going to be in flux and worry. So, you know, we all know when we're in a state of worry, it's very hard to connect to God, very hard. But what we're seeing here is that 99% of the time, the things that we are concerned about, if not 100% of the time, the things that we're concerned about, you know, about the financial, about the relationships, about whatever it may be, actually removes ourselves from the 100% experience of life that we have every moment. Yeah. And it's usually the solutions that come to the issues that we're thinking about aren't because we've worried or stressed about it. It's actually when we've let go, the solution appears from Hashem. If I think in my life, the solutions that took place to the issues that I've had have never come from me fretting and being anxious and worrying. They've always come through the back door, something that Hashem says, I know you think you're running the show, Shmuel, but here, let me give you the solution. It's completely separate to what you're thinking about, you know? So that's how life is. Solutions come not from us. Yes, we have to be proactive, and yes, we have to, you know, follow those solutions and try and manifest creatively and engage with this world, and not only wait for Hashem to throw everything on our plate, but we have to also realize that the solutions to life aren't through us. They present themselves from Hashem. We just have to follow them, and we have to do our proactive engagement as well on that same, you know, same line as well. All right, guys. All the best. Have a beautiful day, and we'll hopefully see you later at 5 p.m. See you later. Bye.